Did you get the vote? Yeah.
And who? Then us.
Pin us. There you go. May I make an announcement to ask for volunteers? Yeah, and I'll just say super quick. Yeah, and then I have to get to the piece of justice. Because I've got 2 organizations. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So. Right. Excellent. Okay. So, Sharon, are you gonna tally the votes? Do you have a tally sheet for me? We can get a piece of paper for you. Hey, I might. Oh, there we go. Okay. Oh, you mean see? You have to talk loud. You know, project. Okay, we're gonna get this this meeting started, and we have a great program today. Our beginning presentation is on reproductive choice. It's a long title. It's a long title. And with Mary Austin-Seymour and Liz Backstrom is going to present quite a bit of important current information on some important topics in that area. Mifepristone status and what's the status even in the state of Washington in the United States for hospitals and women's reproductive choices, even in the state of Washington. And then we're going to do some committee reports. Tracy's gonna be talking to us about what's happening next month. There will not be a membership meeting here next month. We're going to do First Friday at the Clark County Historical Museum. I'm not going to tell you the details. Tracy's going to do that later at 11. Okay. I could have the first slide, please. Reproductive rights.
Oh, and actually, before I start my talk, I'm also on the voter services committee, and along with
A little louder.
at WC Vancouver, we are hosting a national voter.
Loud.
registration.
Talk loud.
Hold it. Yeah, it's on.
We just need to.
Okay, there's our fines and properly passed. Okay. And that takes place on Tuesday, September 19th, from 9 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock in the evening. There are 2-hour shifts. I have a number of volunteers already, but I could use a few more, specifically 3 are volunteers. So please see me afterwards if you're interested, or email me if you're interested in, yeah.
I'm sorry about focus. What was that for?
It's a National Voter Registration Day at WC Vancouver. It's in conjunction with the student government of WCV. National Voter Registration Day.
September 19th. I think it's Tuesday, September
It's
19th.
Tuesday, from 9 to 5.
Yeah.
So, Liz and I are going to talk to you about reproductive rights, and the title that we gave our talk is, will medical abortion be banned? In other words, abortion with medication, and what can we do about it? I am a retired physician. I was a radiation oncologist. My interest in methylpistone is entirely on my own, nothing to do with anything I ever did professionally. So keep that in mind. So I'm doing the first part, and this is going to be what we can do about it. So next slide, please. So the League of Women Voters US has a court position, and in their lengthy document, this is what they said: protect the constitutional right of privacy of the individual to make reproductive choices. Well, all of us who get their emails know that we're a little more activists than that. Here last month, we celebrated Women's Inequality Day, and around June of last year, and beyond that, there have been lots of stuff from the National League about abortion and reproductive choice and reproductive rights. And this is my view, women have rights only when we fully control our reproduction. I had just turned 20 when Roe was decided in January of '73. And all of us who are 65 and older probably know women, or know of women whose lives were irrevocably changed by becoming pregnant and having a child when they were very young. So I went to college in Minnesota at St. Olaf College. It is a Lutheran affiliated school. It's a liberal kind of Lutheranism. Remember that. And in my first semester, one of my classmates was visibly pregnant. She married a boyfriend who also went to St. Olaf, who was 2 or 3 years ahead of us. She was from a famous Lutheran family, multiple pastors, multiple theologians. My school made her drop out. They let her husband stay in, and he graduated. So I wrote my own rule about privacy and a little internet with me. She never graduated from college. I hope did a happy life. I can't tell that from that, but certainly she never had jobs that she would have otherwise been able to attain with an undergraduate education. And there are many others. I hear that some of those stories maybe happen still in other parts of this country. All right, so next slide. So interestingly, I am not a very good historian. I'm sure you can probably help me out if there are other questions, but from the American Revolution until the mid-19th century, abortion was legal in every state under common law until quickening, which is about the 4th or 5th month. Well, Joseph Alito did not get in his Dobbs opinion. He chose to gloss over that. Well, then, by 1900, abortion was a felony in every state, except for exceptions for rape, incest, and health of the mother. Abortions previously were handled by midwives, primarily with medications, herbs, things like that. Some procedures, intrauterine installation of various fluids, things like that. Yeah, it's a little dangerous. Of course, keep in mind that we didn't have antibiotics until the early 20th century, and aseptic techniques, say a sterile technique in the OR, that didn't come about until like the late 1800s. So It was a risky time, but the physician patriarchy said, and in part, I mean, this is not completely historically accurate, but they have a large part in saying, no, midwife, women, get away from this. We want to control this. As men, we don't really have anything better to offer, but we just want to make it legal.
Because they need money.
And it made money, right? Well, then it was just outlawed completely. But, so then, as I mentioned, the big landmark case, 1973, and the states were prohibited from banning abortion, every single one of them, on the basis of the right of privacy during the first trimester. After that, when abortions happened, they were all surgical procedures, primarily DNCs. I can use that freely in this room, most women, men not so much, but until 2000, when medication abortion became available through FDA approval of specifically mifepristone. Next slide. Now, mifepristone blocks progesterone, which is a hormone necessary for a pregnancy to continue. It's used with mifepristone, which is a medication that causes uterine contraction. That's within 24 to 48 hours later. It's done in an outpatient setting. And I just want all of us to remember as well that mifepristone is an essential element of outpatient management of miscarriage. You know, spontaneous miscarriage sometimes completes itself on its own, but contemporarily mifepristone and misoprostol are frequently used in order to avoid a surgical procedure for a spontaneous miscarriage. So the initial approval was for up to 7 weeks. And next slide. I actually read the document, the FDA approval or the request for approval for the FDA. This was not a new medication. It had been approved in France, in the UK, in Sweden, highly effective. So the United States proceeded with 2 large prospective studies involving more than 1,200 women. And they found it was 92% effective in pregnancies up to 7 weeks. Almost everyone had cramping and bleeding. Well, miscarriage caused that too. And some people had nausea. And in the toxicity list, there were no deaths. That's always important with any medication. And there was one excessive bleeding that required transfusion. So I do want to say that the FDA is not an organization. It's a scientific organization that takes its work very, very seriously. And it is not easy to get a drug approved by the FDA, a new drug, a new cancer drug, or anything. So next. So then medication abortion use increased. The doses were adjusted. Actually, there was less mifepristone used, very expensive medication, more misoprostol. Misoprostol was also used in deliveries to induce labor. So it has multiple uses. And so they did more studies, and they extended the approval up to 10 weeks of pregnancy, 95% effective. As safe as Tylenol, safer than penicillin, and much safer than that, as we all like to say. This allowed that new rule in 2016, allowed prescribing by telemedicine and sending the medication in the mail. And about 50% of all abortions are now done with medication. Next slide. So this all changed not that long ago. In June of 2022 with the Dobbs-Jackson case, which upheld the Mississippi ban on abortion and decided that the Constitution would not protect the right to abortion. And within 3 months, abortions were outlawed in 15 states. Now, the Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine,
Freudian.
I do know the Hippocratic Oath. I had to take it when I was not this forever ago. So they decided to incorporate in Amarillo, Texas. And why? Because there's only one federal judge there, and there's no to be conservative. So they formed their organization there. It's a coalition, you know, a number of people, including physicians, and they have many partnerships. One is with the Catholic Medical Association. And they challenged the initial approval as well as the 2016 extension of the stuff. And the first hearing was actually, they filed it in November of, I didn't put that time, but they filed it in November of 2022, shortly after they incorporated. And the judge didn't really know what to do, so he kind of sat on it for a while. Because I can remember all the outcry through the house, as well he should. And so the first hearing was in March. And the goal of this alliance is to end all access to mifepristone in the entire country. Okay, next. Never has FDA approval been revoked by a court of law. The FDA themselves will just take a drug off the market if they, with monitoring of the drug and more people, like a famous one in Vioxx, which was for arthritis and inflammatory diseases and pain caused by inflammation. And so, but never has a court required the FDA to revoke approval of a medication, which is, well, in my opinion, courts doing things they're not supposed to be doing. All right, next. So now things started happening really quickly. The judge ruled pretty quickly. Their case was based on, there have been more than 100 studies done on mifepristone throughout the world. And they relied on 5 studies to show that women were being harmed by this medication. So, well, 4 of 5 were reporting on abortions done beyond 10 weeks. We don't do those in our country. And so those are pretty irrelevant to this situation. The other was done in Finland. And yeah, 20% of the women went and saw their physician or their nurse practitioner after they took the medication, usually for bleeding. Pretty normal. So the actual conclusion of that study was that bleeding was expected, serious complications are rare, and that the medication is safe. Next slide. So pretty quickly, the judge issued a preliminary injunction suspending all mifepristone approval for the entire country. The same day in Washington, we were ready. Bob Ferguson had filed a case shortly before that date, saying that the FDA must continue distributing mifepristone in 16 states and in DC. And a Washington judge ruled on the same day that that would continue to be the case. So then there was a 3-judge panel, I'm not a lawyer either, but that reviewed the case pretty quickly and ruled that the drug can only be used up to 7 weeks and cannot be sent in the mail, which is a real disservice to rural people. So the DOJ, Department of Justice, and the drug manufacturer Danco appealed to the Supreme Court to hear the case. Next slide. So on April 21st, so this is all happening in April very quickly, they decided to block the lower court decision, to send it back to the Fifth Circuit to decide the merits of the case. In the meantime, nothing's changed. Mifepristone remains available in all states. It was available before, and it will continue to be available until the appeals process, the legal process concludes. So the Fifth Circuit Court came through on August 16th. They ruled that mifepristone was going to remain legal. They kind of went back to the 2000 FDA approval. Only up to 7 weeks, no telemedicine, no mail. So that's the current state at the moment. Well, no, actually not. That would only be if the Supreme Court doesn't hear it. It's all still unfold, so it's still available. So we don't know what the future is. Next. So legally, yes, I just said the wrong thing here. Yeah, no, the changes are not implemented because the appeals process is in place. And the DOJ asked the Supreme Court to hear the case a while ago. They asked again yesterday. Danco, the drug manufacturer, asked the Supreme Court yesterday to hear the case. And I don't know what to think. If they decide not to hear it, the Fifth Circuit Court ruling about 7 weeks, no mail, no telemedicine will hold. That will become the law of the land, which is, they're messing with the FDA. I'm curious. If the Supreme Court hears it, I really don't know what they will decide, because I think I have serious doubts of the Supreme Court's ability to understand scientific thinking based on, they like to think in medieval terms and there was no science, but that's a lot of editorializing on my part. Okay, next slide. So worst case scenario, if it gets banned totally, then there are a few alternatives for medication abortion. You can use this alone. That's pretty safe, that drug, in terms of approval, because it's commonly used in normal delivery side prostitution. So that drug, I can't see the FDA or the court messing around with. But you have to take it more often. It's only 80% effective, and you get a lot sicker. A lot of nausea, vomiting, chills, diarrhea. I think that might be my last slide. Oh, no. Many more resources. I'm only just talking about one aspect of this issue. And I would for all of you that haven't listened to it already, our own Tracy Riley Kelly and Teresa Curtis interviewed Sammy Alloy from Cochise, Washington, and that's available on the XRW Citizen 411. Lots of good information there. Liz is going to be sharing more information with us. It's very helpful. Other reliable sources are the Food Market Institute, Planned Parenthood, and the Center for Reproductive Rights. So I want to hold questions until Liz has spoken, and then we'll take questions. So Liz Backstrom, one of our other members, is going to talk about what can we do about it.
I mean, I have two thoughts about this, but let's hold it. We don't want to run out of time.
Yeah.
Right.
Hello, testing. Can you all hear? Okay, if I start talking really fast or too quiet, just wave your arms. Okay, so I'm going to take a little bit of a different track, but I'm going to try. This is the same topic. I'm going to talk about why this issue matters, and even if you will never get an abortion, and what we can do about it. So the first top level takeaway that I have is that extremely restrictive laws are being passed around the country at the state level. I don't have my notes on what I think, so I'm not going to do the whole stare down the whole. At the state level, that should be concerning for all Americans, especially women. I think one that you mentioned just now is the one about the mail, and I think we should take a second to think about if that were passed, how that would be enforced. And I don't know if we need to spend a lot of time speculating, but if a law were to be passed that medication can't be sent through the mail, I mean, that's already kind of a thing. There are things you can't send through the mail. But I just think it's important to think about the fact that more and more civil rights issues occurring on this front, and that's something that extremely worries me. I think it's something important for all of us to think about because we feel pretty safe here in the blue state. I don't feel that comfortable about it. Sorry, my phone is on a battery saver, so it's okay. So currently, it's up to 22 states, which I checked as of August, it's up to 22 states which now ban abortion completely or restrict the procedure earlier in pregnancy than the standard set by Roe versus Wade. And in many of those states, there are no exceptions for rape or incest. If those changes don't currently affect you, or if you're not following the legislation closely, you might not know about this. But the legal landscape around this, as Mary said, is very rapidly changing. I follow a blog called Abortion Every Day, and I read about this quite often. So this is the issue that's of great concern to me. I don't think it would affect me personally, as I don't think it will, but it concerns me for the civil rights aspect. One example I can think of is that laws are being passed or proposed that restrict women's rights to get an abortion out of state. So aside from the things that are being discussed about mailing, there's a law was passed in Idaho imposing criminal penalties for helping someone travel to get an abortion. And laws have been proposed about restricting someone's travel to get one. I don't think those have been passed, but they've been proposed. In another example, a 41-year-old woman is facing felony charges in Nebraska for allegedly helping her teenage daughter abort a pregnancy. And the police were able to seize her communications over Facebook. They requested them from Facebook and they got them. I think this case is probably not going to go through because they're calling it an abuse of what they call the ex post facto laws. As they did this before that was even passed. And so it was legal at the time. But I think we should be, I'm concerned that they were able to basically back down this woman's basic methods, and prosecute her and put her in jail for helping her daughter obtain an abortion in the first place, which I mean, I don't know about y'all, but that kind of freaks me out.
Dramatic. So Liz, you've got your pictures up.
Yeah,
Do you
it's
want
like,
to use that one picture about that shows the United States and where?
yeah,
where
sorry, I
it's
might say
at?
it in the best order. Yeah, can you
Yeah.
go to the slide that shows the number of states that have abortion restrictions?
Yeah, I didn't know which.
And that's my fault, sorry. It's not your fault at all.
Well, we know how busy you are.
And I didn't
That
say what order to put them in. So these are the states where it's legal or there's protections. Washington is the state where it's both legal and they've added protections. It's hard to see, but the dark green states have added protections. Washington is really good about this. So just to touch on really quick.
And the next one too, right?
Oh yeah, this is the state where it's, yeah, so there's 22 states where there's either complete ban or added bans. So it's almost half. And something that's not shown here is that there are several other places where it's being very hotly disputed like right now. So within like a month or 2 months, it looks very different. And not to be a complete downer, a lot of places there have been victories where people have been, you know, we don't want this, it's not popular, and such as that. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, but it is quite unpopular because a lot of people don't want these very restrictive bans. Anyway, okay, so the method case is concerning because it was brought by such a small group of people who I've married that are this isn't, I don't know how well this is known, but they are religious activists. I forget the name of the group, but the group that brought the case, they're from a religious background, and there's nothing. I'm going to talk about this more, but there's nothing inherently wrong with anything religious. But this group of people has a very extreme agenda, and they represent a very small slice of the opinion. And I think that's something that not everyone knows. So anyway, that's something that I want to emphasize as we go through this. Mary already talked about the subcommittee for the 7 minutes to cover that. Oh yeah, so people passing these laws or proposing them have openly stated that they would like them to be a national policy and they would like a national ban. They're in favor of things like fetal personhood. I don't know if everyone's familiar with that. I don't have time to get into it, but I don't think we have to speculate about that because they pretty openly stated that they want these things to pass and they want them to be. And this is also in a current climate where things are already allowed, like pharmacists are allowed to say, you know, I don't want to prescribe this medicine to you because it's against my ethics. They can already do that. And companies are allowed to refuse you healthcare that they don't like because they don't agree with the ethics. Hospitals are allowed to refuse you healthcare because they don't agree with the ethics. And whatever you think about that, just personally, I think if you're a person living in a place where there's one hospital or one pharmacy, that's kind of bad for that person. There's not a lot of consumer choice there. So all this may sound kind of alarmist, but again, I follow this issue almost daily, and it's very much not. Like, this is happening very fast, and there is definitely a more extremist type of group that is pushing this, but it's also they have a lot of power to take the debate and to make law. And I just think that's something not a lot of people know, and so I want to emphasize that in my part of the talk. I'm not just like people with sounds like an honor, but just to put it out there. I remember in the 5 or 6 years before jobs, people were saying this kind of thing, like we should probably be concerned, like people are pushing for this, and people were like, oh, that's never going to happen. And look where we are. So I think being complacent about our rights is very dangerous because we can't assume those all always be there. So I'm going to spend a minute. So okay, just to go back. The first top line takeaway is that laws are being passed or proposed that are pretty extreme. Things that most people are not aware of, and that people would like to be national in scope and even bigger than we're aware of. And I'll get to the second one in a minute, but I'm going to spend a minute on a personal topic that I think is important, kind of like what maybe because I think it connects to me. I think I have a unique perspective on this because of the way I was brought up. And I think many people raised in mainstream social or political environments really underestimate the fervor of anti-abortion groups. and why they do what they do. I spent my formative years in a really conservative religious environment, and I just can tell you it's a very, very different world. My family itself is politically pretty disengaged. And then for most of these politically, they're kind of all over the map. They're probably what I call blue dog Democrats, and they're also religious. They attend church. I attend church. But I attended a religious school on a scholarship in addition to church, and I kind of was exposed to a very fundamentalist belief system about the South. And I think people in these types of groups have a view that it's hard to understand unless we've experienced directly. And then even within that, there's people in those groups who are, this is kind of their whole thing. And when people on the other side of this come out with charts about sex ed or teen birth rates or, you know, legal and medical stuff, and they kind of have this logical, rationalist approach, or even maybe they say, well, I don't personally agree with this, it's not in my morals. That's not at all how those people think, I guess. And so I'm not, you're trying to make an argument with logic, and this is someone's bedrock ethical belief system, and you're not going to be able to say it. So I'm not saying that one side has ethics and logic and the other side doesn't have ethics and logic. That's not, it's more just, but there's a specific type of supporter who is very hard to get through to on this, and it's because they believe that they're doing God's work. Not to stereotype, but that's really what they believe, and they will do almost anything to get this passed. Things that people like, I don't want to say regular, things that people who don't believe this that strongly cannot imagine what state was. That probably sounds kind of crazy, but I mean, I've met a lot of people like this, and I think that's
It's beginning to be a little hard to understand.
okay. Sorry. So anyway, the reason I'm bringing this up is because I think it's very easy to underestimate this position and the strength of it and the lengths people will go to pass these laws. Like they don't want to rest until there is absolutely no abortion anywhere in the country and the world. And once again, I know that sounds kind of like, oh my gosh, crazy, but I can tell you it's not. Anyway, getting back to myself, the reason I was on scholarship with the school is that my mom was a single mom and had me as an unplanned pregnancy. And we had virtually no money for most of my childhood, which is one of the reasons I'm so passionate about social issues. She was able to get me into the school for a better quality education, which is part of the reason I got my college degree. And I'm grateful for the experience. I mean, it wasn't a bad school. I had a good experience there. I had a lot of friends. I still talk to a lot of them today. So it wasn't entirely bad, but they just had a very different life experience than myself. I think I knew firsthand what it was like to be a kid who, like, just logically probably should have been aborted, but I'm obviously glad I was. It would have made more economic and social sense. I mean, I'm obviously glad I wasn't. But then I had to live with the consequences of being in a life where my family was not prepared to parent me, like emotionally, financially, socially. They just were not. My dad was never there. My mom was desperately poor. She worked 3 jobs. I was alone all the time. I didn't have childcare. I was literally just alone, like when I was a little kid. There's stuff that happened then that like I just cannot. I mean, she wasn't abusive to me or anything, but there's just stuff that I don't talk about that I'll probably never talk about that I went through in my childhood. It was not good. You know, there were a lot of things that were hard, and I wouldn't trade it because I think it made me who I am. But I think in our culture, we romanticize the kind of motherhood bond and like this sort of hallmark version of poverty when people are brave and resilient and like they become great people and all this stuff, and that's silly. I think, like, I'm not a mom, but I know that it's one of the hardest things you can ever do, and I think it has to be someone's choice just from what I went through and seeing what my mom went through, and that's the reason that me and my mom are both pro-choice, even though she chose to have it. If she doesn't think that anyone else should be that unless they want to. And my classmates at the school didn't understand that. Like, I don't want to demonize them because I've been morally conflicted about this for most of my life and probably until I was like my mid-20s. And I still am, at least personally, I think. But societally, I don't want to put that view on everyone. But they didn't understand how you could ever just not want to date all the time because they didn't have any experience that wasn't just positive with their families and their private. And I wish everyone was that fortunate in their lives, but they're not. That's the reality. Let's see here. I think I'm talking too long. I think I want to say.
So, I do want you to make the point about that there are counties in Washington that don't have that only have Catholic hospitals or
Yeah, I'm gonna get tired of my, am I out of time?
No, it's just, it's time to start wrapping up.
Okay, so my job right now is working with domestic violence survivors, and that's another aspect of this debate, is that, people in domestic violence relationships, their partners often sabotage their birth control, they have them in abusive relationships, that's another aspect to this whole thing that people don't think about, and I didn't think about it until I started working where I work. Anyway, there's just a lot here, and I think this is a very complex issue that people kind of make as a binary, like put on a bumper sticker, whatever, and the more I learned about it as I grew, the more I realized I just could not reduce it to that. So that's why I have to do that. But I want to share my background because I think it's complex for a reason. And I think it's important to keep that in mind as we have these discussions. So the second point is that it's a big health issue. And I was thinking that's where I'm living in the hospital. Maternal mortality rates here are already very, very bad. Slide. Yeah, I think that's from 2020. So there's a data lag. But as you can see, we're not doing very well compared to other countries. And since the passage of jobs, healthcare providers are already, after COVID, healthcare providers are already quitting in huge numbers. And they're now OBGYN doctors are quitting specifically because there's so many new rules around whether they can do procedures and whether they can counsel people about this or that, whether they can do, I'm not sure the name of the procedure. Yeah, they're afraid they're gonna get fired or gonna get jail time in some of these states, and so they're quitting. They're not going into the field, and the ones that are in the field are quitting. And you're seeing hospitals are already closing, consolidating, and specifically maternity hospitals and maternity wards are closing. So you have what they call maternity care deserts, which I don't know if I have a slide about that.
You do.
Oh, okay. But I know, like in Idaho, they had 2 of their maternity care things closed in the past year alone. Idaho has a panel that reviews maternal deaths. They shut that down. A bunch of people from Idaho are all coming to Spokane to get care, and Spokane clinics are crowded. Let's see here. I think when Bonner General Health was one of the hospitals that closed, and they cited the state's legal and political climate and the departure of highly respected talented physicians. As the reason they closed. So you know they just ran out of people. So I think and going to what Sharon said, there's also a lot of, as a result of this consolidation, a lot of the remaining hospitals are owned by religious organizations, which again isn't a bad thing by itself, but they do have the power to approve or disapprove specific procedures and medications. And I'm not sure, I think y'all are pretty informed, but I don't know that the general public really realizes that. So you can't just go down the street because there is no place down the street for 400 miles, especially as these deserts get bigger. So Washington State specifically tried to pass a law called, I have it somewhere.
Keep our care act.
Yeah, that would have done a lot of different things. One of the things that would have done was address hospital emergency consolidations. It didn't pass, even though Washington has done a lot of good. So that would be something that would be great to see supported. But yeah, that's something that I think is another big issue here. People think about jobs and they just think about just abortion, but there's a lot of wide-ranging effects on our healthcare system that people don't realize are connected. So like the exit of providers, the consolidation of the hospitals, the overcrowding of existing facilities. Those are all part of this issue. I think I got a little bit out of order here.
And a lot of the hospitals that are refusing to honor like pro-choice choices or help women also are refusing end of life documents.
Yeah.
It's
Right, they go hand in hand.
yeah, but
I
that
hope
affects everybody, every age group.
Yeah, there's a lot here, but having that kind of say over people's individual healthcare decisions. I mean, I do believe strongly in personal choice, but you can't really have that when there's only like one outfit and they're only using their personal choice to cut out their personal choice. So, and maternal mortality did increase, I think, in 40% in 2021 overall in the United States. The chart had only goes up to 2020, but that's not even including the effects of jobs, right? So it's going to get worse. So anyway, this was like a lot of a downer, but I think there's good news because this kind of broke up a lot of people when this passed and people became very angry and women were like, I can't believe this happened. This is not popular. And even people who maybe personally are kind of like, about abortion. I think I know I was kind of a little bit like that and that like I believe in it sort of like I believe this in theory, but I don't think that much about it. Well, when that was passed, I basically became radicalized about this because I think there's nothing like having your rights taken away by people who are mostly men that kind of stuck me off. And so I think, like, here's an example of the like more than 1,500 legislators who have made abortion law at the state level since that was passed. About 200 of them are women, and the other 1,300 of them are men. So I don't know about you guys, if that's weird. I don't like that. And I think there's something that, if you want to talk about what we can do, I don't have slides about that, but I did write a lot of stuff down. I think that, just to reiterate, the people who are making the most noise about this on the anti side are largely a really small group of people with extreme positions who are kind of steering the narrative. And I think there are people who are personally uncomfortable and morally uncomfortable, but most people are not okay with like a full ban, and they're not okay with these restrictions on proposed or actual restrictions on travel, restrictions on civil rights, you know, doctors not even being allowed to talk about it. Most people are not okay with that, even people who are pro-life. So the people proposing these extreme restrictions are a really small group, and they don't represent most people. But I think regular people are not very politically active, and these people with the extreme positions are very politically active. So they sound like a bigger group than they actually are. And they're shaking it, they're making progress because they're out there spending their time doing it. So I think for stuff you can do. I think as an individual and maybe even as a league, I think we need to talk more about this and not be afraid to say word abortion and just give people are completely saying that and being afraid to get out there and advocate for it, or even just educate yourself, talk about it. I mean, it depends on the comfort level, but I think as a group, this is a position we decided to support, and I think we need to be more vocal about that and decide to just step out. And I think as a person, just an individual, again, it depends on what you're comfortable with, but you can financially support organizations. And I have a list I can send out if you want. You can advocate for things like the Bar Care Act or the Women's Health Protection Act at the national level. Alan and Beth can publish daily healthcare newsletter you can sign up for. And it's not just about that, it's about healthcare, but there's a lot there. Again, yeah, sign money. There's a lot of places that send that aid access that send help to people. They give people hotel stays for the night if you need to go out of state and get an abortion. They're just doing such great work. And there's a lot you can do. If you personally can't go out and do anything, you can find money to go and do it. And I think that's everything. Sorry, that was kind of long, but I have a lot to talk about. So anyway, thank you.
You got about 7 minutes for questions.
All right, that's 7 minutes of question.
Yes, mine isn't necessarily a question, but I was reading just this morning that I was reading just this morning that in addition to OBGYNs just quitting, they are leaving states like Idaho that have made the decision to not support abortion rights because they're worried that they will be arrested. So in addition to having a healthcare desert because people are quitting, people are leaving to other places where they can't be appreciated. So that was just one additional point.
Right. So that means that women who want to have children need fertility treatment, you know, all kinds of things, cannot be cared. They can't have their babies in their hometown. They have to travel. So yeah, this is really a problem. Yeah, I agree.
Sorry, I got here late. I was stalking me for my 7-year-old grandson. But I saw in the paper this morning, and I don't know if you discussed it, but it's really huge.
I don't know if you saw this in the paper this morning, and I heard it on the news, that it's going to the Supreme Court now about the decision of whether an abortion pills can be held. And I hate to tell you what the percentage is of the court right now. So, I am very concerned about this, and I think all of us should be, and I think we should be making our voices heard.
The only way to combat this, correct me if I'm wrong, is for Congress to pass a law. Is that right?
Well, that would be a really good way to.
But what's there's no ball chance. Doing that, but. Yeah, I know we allowed.
So the FDA has filed a series of amicus briefs in the various aspects of the Backstrom case. The FDA wants us to wear, and I'm very pro-choice and think that the whole thing is just But the FDA has filed several American amicus briefs. One specifically about mail, one specifically about drugs in general. Their concern is that this, if the Supreme Court allows this to go through, this is a Trojan horse that is going to allow anybody who disagrees with any medication or the use of any medication for any specific purpose to file a complaint and force drugs off of the market that are very helpful to people for a variety of different reasons. And the FDA is extremely concerned about this mail ban because at this point in time, we are approaching 70% of all prescription medications that are received through the mail rather than through a drugstore. Because people in rural areas, people who are traveling, get their prescriptions that way. And this is not only going to affect Mr. Backstrom, this is like going to affect all of us in ways that really have not been thought of by a lot of people.
Any of you recently stood in a line at the drugstore, you don't know why you want to get your medications in the mail. Birth control pill would be next, would be my guess, on my anonymous line. Next.
So I have to, do you guys know what the Comstock Acts?
Yeah.
Yeah, people have been citing that like favorably there about this whole thing. I don't know about you, but I don't want to make 1872 great again. But the Comstock Act, for anyone who doesn't know, is a law that was in the 1870s, prohibiting sending through the mail a list of stuff people thought was morally weird, like contraceptives, I think porn, I don't know. Pornography. Yeah, and so people, I mean, it was on the books for quite a while, and people were like, what if we did that back? It'd be so great. Not great, obviously, but this is something that people are in all seriousness tossing around as a thing that they would like to bring back. And that is, again, quite concerning.
Well, it's never been taken off the books.
Yeah,
It's still on the.
The law stands, it's the check.
I heard one person say that we ought to start referring to the Dobbs Act as the Rapist Protection Act. Because,
Great, insect, go, yeah.
yeah, but not short and sweet, the rapist, oh, you mean the Rapist Protection Act, that one?
I suppose that would be a way to end all conversations, not that we're having many.
No, it's not a conversation, they're just telling us what we're allowed to do now with our own self.
Okay, well, I think I'll turn it to Sharon, right? Here we go.
Okay, good discussion. I also heard, through a podcast that I listened to, is that the standing of the group that's trying to, get methylprednisolone is a slippery slope argument, and that the doctors don't have a very good case, because they're basically saying that these women are coming into an emergency room, and that's distract. Well, then that means a whole bunch of distractions are coming into the emergency room and different silly arguments. Anyway, so moving on, Tracy's gonna give us a committee report and tell you, I got wonderful, exciting details for next month or Friday.
She knew I wanted to tell you. And the other thing I do want to mention is for those of you who are interested in scintillating public affairs, Citizen 411 is the podcast that Teresa and I do that Mary referred to. And all you have to do is write KXRW and Google it, and Citizen 411, we actually have our own page. So this is a podcast, and you could listen to it anytime. And our next interview is going to be the election special with Greg Kinsey. So each of those, they're all just so good. You will want to know. But the other thing you want to be part of is the celebration of voting. The museum takeover, which is going to take place by the League of Women Voters at the Clark County Historical Museum, Friday, October 6th, from 5:30 to 8:30. Now, we need to get there earlier for those of you who are going to help with this, but what is a celebration of voting, but fun, fun, fun. And the other thing for you to think about is a way to engage a lot of people who normally don't engage in voting, right? So one of the things that we're gonna do is first Friday in October is lively, downtown is just full of people. And so we are even going to bring them up. The Vancouver Downtown Association is promoting this. The Clark County Historical Museum is promoting this. So we have many partners who are out there promoting. And what do we want to do but talk about voting? Well, one of the things that's so fun about the museum is it's the perfect setting to do things for the league. So for example, one of the fun things that we did in the 1970s was called the Candidate Kegger and Hotter Than Air Festival, held in the Lucky Brewery, where candidates would talk about things, the parties would be there, people would quaff a beer at the Lucky Break Hall. So we are actually going to do a mini recreation of this because there is a brewing exhibit at the county, at the museum. And we have invited both the Democrats and the Republicans who are going to be this close from each other and show how nonpartisan the League of Women Voters are. And there will not be a candidate forum, but people are going to show up with issues in their mind because we believe in a spirited debate. And everybody's going to be quite nice, but we're going to have a lot of interesting things going on. We're going to have a social justice table where there could be a area where there could be a lot of information. Friends, I need your help. Sharon, look at this activity. Wouldn't that be a wonderful activity for the public to do, to vote on what kind of redistricting and show them how ranked choice vote? So that was one of the things I thought of. We got to bring that over and do that, right? The idea to get people, and what is one of our outcomes? Committed members, by the way, in addition to talking to people about voting and all of the things that we do. And then lastly, the Her Story exhibit, which features League of Women voter history, as well as the history of women in our area here. It's going to close in the spring of 2024. So we really want to bring people in to see it. And to this effect, we are inviting as many women who have held office in the area. And I have to tell you, one of the people whom I have invited is the famous Linda Smith. And Linda Smith is going to be there. She's got a picture on the wall. This is all about nonpartisanship. So that's the other thing I want to say. Even though I want to invite people to bring their social justice issues. What do we need? We need your attendance. What else do we need? Talk to Teresa Torres, because we want to invite these women office holders and tell them how special they are and how much we think of them. And how will we do that? Merely by the wonder of me running into somebody interesting like Mary and having a conversation, right? But we also want to do activities. So, and then of course, Mary should be princess, if not the queen of voter registration is going to set up, you know, so we're going to have an area. Obviously, people are going to do this on their phones, but we're going to show them how to do it. We want to do another area where we want to talk to people about both vote.gov and also about vote 411. So we'll have things set up. So it's going to be all full of activities, and I hope you'll be there. Do you have any questions? Hi, audience.
Tell them a little bit about Her Story and the award it won.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm exceptionally proud of is that what I did during the pandemic was curate and write an exhibit on local women's history that is in the museum. That museum did win the 2020 or 21 museum exhibit of Washington State. Very award-winning. We are also donors. We are also donors to this exhibit, right? The league is all over this, and we have such a large presence. An interesting thing, and Sharon, you just found out about this, you know, one of the things that happens when the panels are given away the museum has to decide what to do with the beautiful panels. And there is a League of Women Voters panel, and you can be sure that it actually will be given to us if we can figure out where to put it. By the way, just to think, so everybody will have to look at that. I also want to mention, everyone needs an editor. I want to put in a plug. You want to know what my secret is? My secret is in this room. Imagine if you were lucky enough to have Deanne Finken and Sally Hale to be your editors on things that you write. That means that what we put out here at the League is only magnificent. And Deanne was the editor of all of this exhibit. And so, wow, 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 wow. Can you imagine what kind of job Deanne did?
Mention
Yes, questions, comments?
I don't. This, I don't know if people know who Linda Smith is, so maybe I'm just what I'm gonna do.
Well, I had Melanie talk. The reason that I laughed is I have to tell you that the nonpartisan League of Women Voters admires former Representative and Senator Linda Smith. Linda Smith in the 1980s led the Republican Revolution and takeover of everything that went on Republican in this area. And she won, believe it or not, I swear to God, you guys, you don't know, a write-in candidate for the 3rd District House of Representatives. She won with a candidacy of 2 months of a write-in for that position. So Linda Smith is #1 political player in our whole area and really made all of those changes. And then interestingly, and I interviewed her, I have to tell you, she's doing some good things right now. She is the head of an organization called Shared Hope International, which is seeking to make legislation identify the perpetrators of sex trafficking rather than the situation that goes on for young women. So she is like, really the work that's going on with Shared Hope is very, very admirable. And I just want to information to this thing about Shared Hope because it is an organization that we would all be behind. Interestingly, what her organization does is it helps victims of sex trafficking, but it also really is interested in equal legislation.
My turn to talk about the forest.
Oh, is that what your hand was?
I was pointing to, Ellie.
Well, I'm about to give this over to Melanie. Any other questions? Be there and tell all of your friends.
Thanks. Yes, I remember the 90s. So. That was an interesting time with yeah, abortion rights. Yeah, rights. All right, well, I'm here to, is it working? Yes, I can, okay. I'm here to talk about the candidate forums. Oh. Of which there are a lot. You know, I've been chair of this committee now for 2 years, and this year is the year of odd year elections. So it's really good sinking in for me. Just how many offices there are on an odd year. The good news is though, we have chosen dates. A lot of hard work by our committee, and I do want to give a shout out to those folks. So, if I can remember where I stood that on the phone, there it is. I want to thank our volunteers who have been there with me every Thursday or Friday for our committee meetings since, don't even know how many weeks it's been now, beginning of August, I believe. Sharon Brown, Sally Hale, Ann Panera, Judy Zider, Kathy Morton, Jackie Lane, Sharon Fujioka, got it. Marlene Neymar, Teresa Hardy, Jane Johnson, Janet Lansford, Teresa Torres, and myself. So, applause for all of those great volunteers. Now, yes.
Okay.
Right after you, you were still glowing from your name.
Oh, sorry.
So, you know, I could talk and talk about this, but the gist is we have 7 forum events that will all take place between the dates of September 21st, which, if you do the math, that's very, very soon. Thursday, September 21st. Yeah, less than 2 weeks away. And October 5th is our last one. The day before the big museum celebration. Busy week. I've written down all 7 events here, and I'll have this after our meeting. If you are able today to check your calendar and say, I can be there. What I'm most interested in today to reach out for is lead presence at our forums. They're all in-person forums. They will be across 3 different venue locations. One is the Vancouver Community Library, their lovely community room downtown that allows us to broadcast live on CBTV. So that's wonderful. We also are renting the La Center Community Center. So believe it or not, you know, we searched Ridgefield. What else is around there? Well, we've looked and looked for locations in north of Vancouver to hold the La Center and Woodland and Ridgefield forums. And lo and behold, there is a community center in La Center. It's the first time we'll be using that site. We'll use that for actually 3 of the forums. The 3rd location is the Clark Calvert's Fire Rescue, which we use for our primary events. That worked very well. So that is up at Dollar's Corner, just west of Battleground. So the locations are listed here and the 7 event dates, which, well, the 7 events span 6 days. One is the double header. So any questions for me rather than me rattling on?
Those are on the website.
They will soon, very soon be on the website.
Meg's got her hand up.
Oh, okay, great, Meg.
You know, I looked at the dates. I'm just trying to figure out what times each are at. Is that posted in I have not been able to find out the times for each of those.
Well, sure. I write that on the sheet also. The standard time is 6:30 until 8 p.m. The one that's a double header will get started earlier, possibly as early as 5. We'll still determine that. So the events are in the evening because most of these candidates work. I mean, where it works. So you know, these school boards, everyday people, will be evenings. And the ones that are at the library will be broadcast live. The others are all recorded by CBTV, which is wonderful. And then they are available to stream anytime. So, any other questions? Here we go.
All right. Thank you. Edry,
We have an add-on. I was at the logic and accuracy test on yesterday, and I just want people to know that they're not expecting more than 30% turnout for this. Yeah, for the general. Also, that there are a tremendous amount of positions that only one person's running. And for you guys that are doing this, when Camas city decision 4, just yesterday morning, somebody signed up for a position. So you can't do that as a right. So you might want to. Thank you. Check that.
So you,
You would know, because it just happened.
Okay.
so somebody filed their paperwork to be a writing candidate.
Right, they can do that now, just let you know, there's a huge election, lots of things, but a lot of them have nobody else running except the person generally they're in it. Or just one, I have never seen such one, and we asked, what did we think, what did they think they were going to be? They thought it would be like the last election, where it was no more than 30%.
Okay, so no more than 30% is expected to vote for, in this general election. Okay, so, I'm gonna warn everybody, I'm going to a play. 2:00, Tina Turner at the Keller, so.
It's great.
So that means I don't want you guys to feel like I'm rude when I kick you out of here. Strictly. So the next part of our program is redistricting. Allison, say hi. Do you have,
We can't hear you. Oh, there you go.
did you turn it back to T?
Yeah.
Talk,
Can you hear me?
yes,
We hear you.
talk some more.
So I want to know what the results of the poll was earlier.
Okay, so, Allison, the number one, winner was Michigan,
Aha.
which is, Michigan's Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission, a 13-member commission, requires 7 of 13 commissioners to agree. 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans, and 5 unaffiliated. And
What was the next one?
the next one was possible 30-31 commission structure. 5 out of 9 with 1 from each. 3 Democrats, 3 Republicans, a non-voting chair, and 3 unaffiliated. And number 3 was a 14-member commission, California Citizens Redistricting Commission.
The 3 that, oh, go ahead.
Our election office, Sharon Brainerd, uses a point system, and so California got 7. Let's see, what was it? Our number 1 got 30 points with all those colored peanuts that I used, and possible was 23 points and 17 points for California. So I'm gonna turn it over to you. Go for it.
I'm Alison McCaffrey. Does the sound okay?
Yeah.
The League of Women Voters of Washington issue chair for redistricting. So the lobby team works at a state level to whatever issue you're working on, and mine is redistricting. And I just want to do a quick, I know we have about 15 minutes, a quick overview a little bit, and then talk a little bit about the structures that you were voting on. So as you probably know, redistricting is where your voting power starts. When you are able to vote in a good map, you can elect people of your choice. And then those people work on the issues that you care about. So this is about representative democracy, right? This is the essence of where voting process starts, is right, the fundamental right at the beginning. And last cycle was the 2021 cycle. After we do the census in the 0 year, then we do redistricting in the 1 year. And that process was a mess. We gave them the league, when we look at them, we gave them such a bad report card. They got sued a bunch of times, twice for not being transparent and following the open meeting laws. Once because they did a district that's discriminatory against Latinos in Central Washington, and we're going to see the maps change, and it could very well affect Clark County District 17, if that is the case, if they decide to go one way versus another when they change the map. So you guys absolutely should be paying attention to this. So the last cycle was such a mess. We are advocating for a constitutional amendment to change the structure and all the rules around which the commission works, so that it'll be representative, transparent, will have enough time to do its work, will be as inclusive as possible, and will come out with the best set of compromise maps that they possibly can. So I'm a firm believer in you get what you design into the process. So right now we have 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans that horse trade our districts. And so what do? We get politically, a ton of political safe seats. We wrestle over and we say Democrats get 1 and Republicans get the next one. And we just don't have that many competitive seats. And there are many, many seats. Almost 10% of the seats go uncontested every time. So if you get what you design, then the design is really important. And that's why we had you look at those different possible designs. So obviously with Democrats, pools of Republicans, and pools of unaffiliated, you get voice in the conversations. And data shows that over 40% of Washingtonians do not align with either of the major parties. That's a lot of people who aren't represented in the current commission. So that's why you're seeing those groupings. Now you've got to decide how many people. Obviously, the more people you've got on the commission, the more expensive it is, but the more representative that commission can be. So now you're looking at 10 or 13 or 15 people to be on the commission. And of course, you got to find the people that have the time to work on the commission as well. Then you're thinking about the balance of power in that commission. How many unaffiliated should you have? We heard from California that with the 4 unaffiliateds in theirs, it was kind of tricky because they had to have 2 to vote the maps in. And then, so those unaffiliated, there was one curmudgeon that just wouldn't vote for anybody's maps. And that left another person that basically was the up or down vote. And so there's all these people dynamics that you think through when you're choosing the structure of the commission. But let's see, what else can I say? Odd or even comes into play based on how you vote, right? How should we have a majority that includes all the different groups? How many of those different groups? Is it different if you've got the same party in power in the House and the Senate or if you've got, 1 and 1 kind of thing? What does that dynamic look like? So I hope I'm giving you some food for thought in terms of the details that you can think through when you're choosing what kind of commission to put forward. That will wrap around that that commission. We want them to be transparent. We want them to have staffing that's adequate. We want them to be accountable. We have to have criteria that's ranked so we understand in their process what are they doing, and they can't just pick and choose from a criteria when they're designing a district. We have to make sure the outreach and the accessibility of the commission is there, and we've got to work to get all communities of color, underrepresented communities engaged and being part of this process. So we get their voice and it becomes part of the conversation and part of the challenge in weighing how do we represent our state best. Now, my focus is on state legislative districts, people we send to Olympia, and congressional districts, the people we send to Washington, D.C. There is also local redistricting in your cities and counties, and that is equally important. And hopefully folks in your group will be working on those as well. You guys know, if you were part of what was going on at the county in Clark County, you know, there's lots of work to be done there. So I just want to excite you about how fundamental this process is, and hope you will continue to push your representatives, build this momentum that we need. This is huge. 33 senators and 66 legislators and 50% of the public, voting public, to vote for this change, to make a difference for ours. So that's why we're starting now to grow the people who are educated about redistricting, to get them to understand why we need change, and to officials to make the change that we want to see. Now, do this alone. We have to do this in coalition. Community partners in all different community, whether it's ethnic communities or socioeconomic differences, we need to be in coalition, and that's going to take work. And so it's going to take all of you to pull in your church groups and your other groups you're part of and say, yes, we need to be doing this about, we need to up the momentum and up the energy about redistricting. Take questions if anybody has specific questions for me. And they could pass it around.
Alison, your Bluetooth is cutting out sometimes on your mic.
That's too bad. Let me take these out.
Okay.
Noise from the room. Okay, can you hear me now?
Question.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
Is there any data that proves size of the commission makes the process go faster or slower? Makes it more complicated or less complicated?
Is there, say that again, is there data that?
For the size of the commission, the number of people on the commission.
It's interesting, when I talked to the California Commission and we talked to the some folks that were in Michigan, it's all about setting yourself up for success. Do you have enough staff members that are supporting the commissioners? Do those commissioners have the time and resources to do their job? There was so much time wasted in negotiation with our four voting members, that there's no evidence that a larger commission takes any longer. I would say a little bit longer, maybe because of the public meetings that you want to do. You want to make sure all the discussion is going on in public. So maybe that's a little bit more time intensive from the commissioners and the staff standpoint to set up all those meetings and support the staff in there. But no data that it's astronomically bigger, just a little bit, or bigger or longer, just a little bit longer and harder, the more people. You got to support them, so the cost is more. They're a commission like California has to travel a lot. They spent $10 million. Ohio is looking at $7 million, and our current commission spends about $1.5 million.
Any other questions? Judy Designer and Sharon. We'll go with Judy first.
Alison, could you let everyone know about the task force that the league has, and how people get more information and join meetings?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for the suggestion and the question. So we have a statewide task force that meets monthly. We do both community organizing and education. Anyone's welcome, although I do want to encourage that people join the local action teams and work locally as well. So Irene Finney has agreed to lead up convening that group in Clark, and we'd love to see more and more people join there and do your own education work and your own local coalition building work and all of that.
But if you would like to join our monthly meetings, you can go to the league website and go to events. They're on the third Wednesday of every month.
This is, Mr. Sharon, this is going to take, fair amount of money. So how is the budget for this project to redistrict the state in 2031 going to be funded from the league perspective? How much
Yeah.
are we gonna need to raise?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So we are currently actively fundraising for redistricting reform. Our first dollars are pinpointed towards doing a statewide poll or public opinion research survey that will help us craft our strategy. And we will be fundraising overall for passing on grants to local leagues to do events and do printing and all the stuff that does. So there's an active fundraising committee that is looking for both individuals and institutional funders to fund this work.
Any other questions? So, one of the reasons why we had the little vote is because I was, when I went to the May League of Women Voters of Washington convention, Alison had a little table, and to tell you the truth, I was not very passionate about redistricting. I hadn't internalized it until Nancy takes me up to the table and she kind of explained the differences, and I got to vote, and then I was like, oh, so once I got the brain, the old noodle and that was kind of my thought for today, was to try and get you guys thinking about it. Because Nancy came to the board a couple months ago and wanted to make sure that our local league is fully supportive. That's one of the things the task force is looking for, is how dedicated, how much energy are we willing to put into this? Are we committed to this? And we're talking about 10 years. I also heard, Alison, that some of this work is really important because it gets us thinking, because my understanding from talking to Nancy is that some of these other states, they got their commissions as a result of a crisis. Is that true?
Yes, when you think about Michigan, right, they had the Flint water crisis and a very obviously gerrymandered redistricting process the time before, and it really sparked a movement in their state. And we're kind of in a halfway position. We don't have legislators doing the map drawing, but we have political operatives that kind of report to the legislators. So it's harder to get people fired up. And that's up to us to convince people how important this is and how fundamental it is to our voting power.
And I heard there was a little bit of drama in Colorado with a league president.
Yes, there was a league president did step down. She was very active in the Democratic Party, and they asked her to step down so that her conflict of interest was too great. Yeah.
So it's really important. So without any other questions, Alison, you're welcome to stay while we wrap up our meeting. Thank you so much for working with me and giving all of your generous time.
Great.
With it.
I'm happy to answer any questions anytime. Sharon can pass out my email address, but definitely be active in your local action team and see what you can do locally and to bring this movement along. I'm going to hop off and talk to some more people in Snohomish.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, so, Ms. Jones.
Just as a point of interest, if you want to watch the drama around redistricting, there are currently 6 states, all of them southern, that are going through massive redistricting fights. And 2 of the states have been ordered by the US Supreme Court to redraw their maps, and they have steadfastly refused. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens if the court has no power in this kind of situation.
I was listening to a podcast this morning, a legal podcast that was talking about, part of it is, when you have gerrymandering that's systemic, you know, based on systemic racism, you're trying to fix it. What ends up happening later is the folks that are trying to fix it, you know, not you know, the blue thing says, I moved into this neighborhood because my house is worth a certain amount of money, and these could cause impacts. Was that, you know, politicians, and I work for the government, nobody wanted to be at fault. So, you know, it's always make them make that decision. So it's a little more complicated than just, you know, it's complicated, as all human things are. And even within our own state, with LD 15, that decision was made before the legislature closed, and they did not make a decision on it. And so we still have to figure out whether or not the Supreme Court is going to fix that, or the legislature is going to fix it. Who knows? Okay, anybody else have any reports? No? Okay, then everybody knows I want to go home. All right, this meeting is adjourned, and thank you so much.
Thank you.